Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on this beautiful sunny day. Must get out and enjoy as much sunshine as we can. We just don't know how much longer it's going to last, but we're happy to have you join us this afternoon. I will call this meeting to order, noting that we have a full attendance on councillors, and therefore we have quorum. And I will ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business of the corporation. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest around the table? Noting that we can so declare at any point in the proceedings. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Anyone want to start? Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, thank you, and always happy to begin. First of all, I want to remind everyone to get your tickets for the 11th annual Meaford Dragons event. Since 2008, the Dragons have assisted over 45 startup businesses with over $215,000 in cash and prizes. Pretty amazing. This year's event will be hosted by Andrew Chapman, and Andrew is an international actor and comedian and writer. He's appeared in such shows as The Murdoch Mysteries. Also new this year is a catered intermission. All this for your ticket price of $30, and $5 from your $30 goes towards the audience choice winner. So that's Meaford Dragons, October the 30th, 7:30 start at Meaford Hall. I'd also like to announce the Bogner Craft Show. That's upcoming on October the 19th. The hours are from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. at Bogner Hall. Lots of Christmas goodies and amazing handcrafted items, and I recall last year even some gluten-free baking for anybody who might require that. And I also wanted to, Your Worship, if you will indulge me, to extend congratulations to our own Councillor Tony Bell on the new location of his business, Blue Water Machine and Tool. I know this has been a big project that's been ongoing all summer long, Tony, to get moved over there, and I had the pleasure of visiting Tony's shop on Friday. It's large and bright and open, and I just wanted to wish you and James every success.
Thank you, Shirley. Anything else? Then I will jump in here with first off a shout out to our Apple Harvest Craft Show organizers and the Scarecrow team that put on such a wonderful weekend for everyone. It was well attended. The sun shone and everybody had a great time. So I know how much. Just give a quick shout out to congratulations to those organizers. The next big thing I wanted to tell you about is we have a repeat of our Ardent Defender exercise. You may not know what that's all about, but it starts Wednesday, October the 9th at 9 a.m. at Meaford Hall, and Thursday, October the 10th at 7 a.m. at the Meaford Water Treatment Plant. This is the second year that we will be hosting part of the Canadian Armed Forces Ardent Defender exercise. It's a counter-explosive threat training scenario, and it's the largest exercise of its kind to take place in Canada and will include participants from over 28. We had 28 countries taking part last year. The aim of the exercise is to refine the skills to defeat threats that could be faced during an armed forces operations. While the Canadian Armed Forces will be simulating a threat scenario at the water treatment plant, municipal staff and local partners, including Grey County EMS, the Meaford Hospital, Grey County Social Services, Town of Blue Mountains, will be testing out our emergency management plan in a simulated water emergency, an exercise. It's not real. Throughout the exercise, residents near the training areas may hear loud blasts and explosions between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Residents may also see military personnel, vehicles, and equipment from the Canadian Armed Forces, emergency service personnel, and soldiers from the international militaries who have been invited to take part in this training event. Saturday, October the 12th, is the Meaford Fire Department Open House on 81 Stewart Street. It will be once again opening its doors to the community, and it's your chance to get behind the scenes look at our firefighting equipment and take part in fun activities for the whole family. The day will feature an obstacle course, truck tours, a hose target, fire extinguisher training, and more. Grey County EMS, OPP, the Canadian Coast Guard, and Canadian Armed Forces will also be joining in on the fun that day, so all welcome, of course. Connect to Skills program from Monday to Friday from October the 21st to November the 15th at the Meaford and St. Vincent Arena. This is a free 4-week course led by Four County Labour Market Planning Board to prepare unemployed or underemployed individuals for a job in the hospitality and tourism industry. Participants will gain the essential skills necessary to succeed in entry-level jobs while also receiving valuable certifications such as SmartServe. For more information or to register, please contact Nicole at planningboard.ca or Jordan at planningboard.ca. On Saturday, October the 19th at 8 a.m. and Sunday, October the 20th at 8 a.m., we have a mobile spay and neuter wellness clinic at the Fire Hall, again, 81 Stewart Street. The Georgian Triangle Humane Society is offering spay and neuter surgeries for cats and dogs aged 8 weeks to 7 years, and that's for dogs under 80 pounds, which includes a rabies vaccine and microchip if needed. This service is for pet owners who are low-income earners receiving government assistant, ODSP or Ontario Works, or for seniors. And for more information or to register on that, it's animaloutreach@gths.ca or call 705-445-5204, extension 223. On the same theme, we have a Meaford's Indoor Puppy Social. I wondered what this was. Saturday, October the 26th, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., and there's another date there. The Canadian Pet Connection at 278 Cook Street, Unit 8 in Meaford. The word is join Jody Hawker from Happy Paws Canine Solutions for an hour of puppy playtime, available for puppies aged 6 months and younger who have been vaccinated. Get one-on-one advice about body language, human-to-dog communications, and more. Plus, all guests will walk away with a free swag bag for the dog, I'm assuming. There is no cost to attend. However, a donation of a canned or bagged pet food item is requested to be distributed to a local animal rescue. Space is limited and pre-registration is requested. So please contact Angela at marketing@canadianpetconnection.ca to sign up. And the last one I have is Words Aloud Spoken Word and Storytelling Festival. We have seen this before. Friday, November the 1st to Sunday, November the 3rd at the Coffin Ridge Winery this time on the second concession north and in other locations as well. This year's Word Aloud Spoken Word and Storytelling Festival will be taking place at the Harmony Center in Owen Sound, the Durham Art Gallery, and Coffin Ridge Winery. Words Aloud Spoken Word and Storytelling Festival is a small but mighty regional event that brings page and slam poets, spoken word artists, storytellers, and songwriters from across Canada and sometimes beyond to the region to read, recite, and perform their work for the region's keen and lively patrons. All welcome, of course, and for more information or to register, please visit www.wordsaloud.ca. I think that's all for announcements today. And we will move then into public presentations. And we welcome all of those, as I've said, to come to council. And we know that we've got a list of those who wish to speak to council today, and we're always happy when that happens. And the first one we have is a presentation from Russ Moore. Russ, welcome.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you today. Myself and my neighbors are here today to discuss our first-hand experience with a local short-term accommodation property, or Airbnb. We live on the third line in Meaford, and this past June our neighbor sold her house. The new owners subsequently, obviously after purchasing the house, they completed renovations on the inside and the outside of the property, and by late August it was listed on the Airbnb website and was basically open for business. In Meaford, You can presently do this without a business license. As of yesterday, I checked online, there's approximately 40 Airbnb accommodation sites within the town core and about 140 within the Meaford district. This obviously does not include other properties that are non-Airbnb, that could be short-term rentals. For those of you who are unaware of the Airbnb system, you can do this by going online to their website, look up a particular property, and then book a residence for any day of the year that you wish, depending on its availability. There is an online calendar to determine when it is available. For the property in question, the owner requires a minimum of 2 or 3 days stay. Except for paying customers, no one resides at this house. Therefore, it is not being run like a traditional bed and breakfast, where the owner might rent out a room or two, but still resides in the property. This owner of this property lives some distance away in the GTA. When you go to Airbnb website and you look up this property, it is right now listing a space accommodation for 12 guests. It has 3 bedrooms, 8 beds, and 2 baths. Originally, it was listed as allowing 14 guests. So in early September, myself and another neighbor visited the town office and subsequently the bylaw office to discuss the situation and to find out our options. We were provided literature outlining the provisions of the short-term accommodations / cottage rentals, that we call it here in Meaford, and accessory apartments and B&Bs. In Meaford, these types of properties fall under the provisions of the short-term accommodations and are laid out therein. Throughout late August and September, it was rented out for 5 weekends in a row with over 10 guests or more staying there. On these occasions, we had to deal with multiple vehicles, up to 6 per stay, per night, coming and going, staying at the residence. Along with these activities came excessive noise, music, partying, outside drinking, just, rambunctious playing around by young gentlemen who were under the influence of alcohol. Bylaw was called on several occasions to voice our concerns. On one particular weekend, things got out of hand. Bylaw was called, but they would not attend because, as part of the conversation with the bylaw officer, and when I told her how many people were there, she felt it wasn't safe. She was by herself, working by herself, and there was over a dozen male drunk individuals. We were advised to call the police. They were also playing loud music and acting up. We didn't call the police at this time. Basically, I just drowned out the noise by turning up my TV really loud, shutting all the windows, staying inside. It is very early on in this, the first couple weeks that was open, so I guess I didn't really want to rock the boat right away. So anyway, on the same week at 2:30 a.m., I subsequently backed out, and instead of driving down my driveway, drove down. One wonders why I know this, because I have security grass. I believe it was after this weekend that the owners of the property, because we had talked to bylaw again, they about the conditions of maintaining. As the weeks went by, we roll over the amount of people and the vehicles coming and going and the disturbances that they create. This is all an additional stressor that nobody needs just from living next door to a place like this. I took it upon myself to visit the bylaw offices of the town of the Blue Mountains, Collingwood, and I called into the Wasaga Beach bylaw and discussed with them their particular policies concerning short-term accommodations. In summary, the town of Blue Mountains allows STAs in certain areas and zones, but they have to be licensed. There is a significant licensing fee of $2,500 that I feel dissuades people that are not serious about opening a B&B. They're not fly-by-night people. If they're going to pay that kind of money, they want to open one up, right? And this also has to be renewed every 2 years, and it's $1,000 a time. They have to adhere to strict fire, building codes, electrical safety code requirements. There are limits to the amount of people who can stay in the residence of the structure. There are other regulations pertaining to cleanliness, parking, guest logs, quiet times, garbage and waste collection, and they need to be adhered to. They also maintain a demerit system that can eventually lead to the loss of the license depending on infractions. Basically, if you get written up for an infraction, you get a couple demerit points. When you get to a certain point, you get a letter from the town. When you go a little further, you have to come to the town office and meet probably the managers. And it's strictly enforced. In Collingwood, the STAs are banned, but B&Bs are allowed. They acknowledge to me that there are many Airbnbs in town, but because of manpower issues, they only deal with the ones that they've received complaints about. They're not proactive in hunting the ones that they sort of know that are there. They just, so many bodies, and they can only act against complaints. And then they would proceed to shut down that upon further investigation if they can confirm that it's Airbnb. So in Wasaga Beach, tourist establishments / STAs are again allowed in certain zones. All STAs must be licensed and they are proactively monitored. They have many of the same and some slightly different conditions that the town of Blue Mountains imposes. They have a large contingent of daily bylaw officers, and over the weekend they regularly work until 3 a.m. As these other locations have specifically addressed this topic in their bylaws over the last decade, we feel that Meaford is behind in this matter. Collingwood addressed it in 2010, Wasaga Beach, Blue Mountain 2014, Wasaga Beach just did a reevaluation and they rewrote it in 2019. What concerns us the most are you can set up an Airbnb residence anywhere within the municipality without obtaining a license or without consultation with your neighbors. Licensing and the conditions that come with them protect all that are concerned. There was no thought to protecting the character and quality of existing residential neighborhoods when these are allowed to just spring up. There's obviously excessive noise, loud music in the day and nighttime, just doesn't happen at nighttime. We've had a few instances where people just come and are cranking up the music in the afternoon, quite loud too, right? So there's excessive number of strangers in the area and added concern of possible break-in and thefts that come from it. We don't know these people that come. Every day you wonder who's going to show up. So there's increased traffic to the area, and they do not abide with the speed limits, probably from they're not even aware of the speed limits or the local, the speed that should be there in that area, right? So there's excessive number of people for this 3-bedroom house. We live in a zoned rural country residential area that we retired to, all of us, and not a commercial area, or business area. We're concerned that with the upcoming winter skiing season, the possibility of many more occupants in the residence and their partying habits, skiers and the like, their stays might not just be the odd weekend, but long-term stays over Christmas and spring break. That's basically my formal presentation. Another timely article from this morning on the simcoe.com website, I just pulled it off this morning, and it addressed short-term rentals in Innisfil and concerns that they have. There's a lot to read there if anyone wished to go there, but basically in the end their mayor came and visited the mayor of the town of Blue Mountains to discuss how they proactively address the situation and in their hopes of fixing the problems that they have. That's a very short version of that. So that's what I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. I can imagine how frustrating it is for you and neighbors around when that happens. Appreciate you taking the time to come and share your story with us, and that we will certainly be taking your comments under advisement. Thank you so much. We move on now to deputations, and we would ask that you keep your remarks within the time frame, please. We have a big agenda ahead of us. So first one off the mark is Jim Hasty. Jim, I know you were there.
Well, good afternoon. Jim Hasty from Road 8 in Sydenham. Well, I guess it was a while ago we saw you, but we're back again. Thank you. Nice. I'd intended to read some of my comments that I sent you by email, but I figured that, well, you've got a lot on your plate today, so I'm just going to make a very short presentation about Leith itself. And while I'm here, it does please me as an individual and a taxpayer to be able to get up here and represent myself and voice my opinion on this. So just about Leith Beach for a minute. Although the beach is a bit rough, it does provide a place of refuge for me, and it appears to many others. And now back on the report. Number one, I agree that with staff that council should refuse the request by the proponent for the exchange and transfer of lands. And on point 2 of the report, I disagree with staff's recommendation to provide for an in-principle exchange and transfer of lands. And my detailed reasons are included in my email to you. And just finally, my last comment would be, it's a bit of a hokey one, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just leave it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
And next we have Ted Lockheed. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ted Lowhead. I live in Leith. My comments are mostly about access to our boat launch. People need to understand that without the circular nature of the driveway, the launch cannot easily be used. I want you to use your imagination now. Imagine yourself driving into the parking lot from the south driveway, the current exit-only driveway, the one farthest from the creek. Your truck and trailer are now facing the launch. There's currently not enough room to turn the rig around so that you can back into the launch. To use the launch, one has to enter by way of the current entrance, the one closest to the bridge. When you enter from that driveway, you're basically lined up to back into the launch. You're all set to go. Referring to the report by staff, if you care to follow along with me, please go to page number 10. Parkland design. Point number 5. It states that there's now approximately 8 parking spaces. This is incorrect. There are certainly more spaces than that now. I saw it this summer. Had to be a dozen, 15 cars down there. And it says there's no boat trailer parking. That also is incorrect. There's certainly more spaces than that now. Further, the application claims 23 spaces will be available if the application goes through. Can that be true? Point number 6 states both the launch ramp and the driveway. That's the one that suggests that we should go down to Owen Sound to launch. This is our municipality's only launch on the Sound. We need to keep it. The launch in Owen Sound is 5 miles away and costs $10 for each launch. This wouldn't be acceptable. Meaford was asked twice in the spring and early summer, at least twice, by myself of this year, to maintain the launch, which would be a matter of taking the sand out of there, and grade the parking lot and driveways. This was never done. Why have these facilities been left to degrade at this juncture? Page 13, permissions and after uses. The last paragraph, and I'll turn the page over, it suggested that this location would be good for residential apartments and a motel. We don't want an apartment building sited there, nor a motel. So this is a staff report. I'm kind of shocked. Page 14, the last paragraph. No tax dollar should be spent in support of any further attempts to push this application through. All such costs should be assumed by the applicant, not your constituents. Page 15, their conclusion. There's no need to give the applicant support for a revised, lesser exchange of transfer of lands. We ask council to send a clear message to staff that for the purposes of this application, no sale, transfer, or exchange of public parkland will be approved. We therefore ask council to consider the 2 recommendations separately and move 2 separate motions. We ask council to carry point number 1 and vote against point number 2 of the staff recommendations. Please, don't be the council that closes our launch ramp. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Lowy. Appreciate your comments. Jack Seaman is next up. Welcome to you. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mayor Klumpus, council members. I thank you for the opportunity to express my opinions regarding this subject and to address you regarding the issues which are so important to the local residents of Leith area. My wife and I have resided on the Annan Road for 35 years, and we feel that we have a voice in the decision-making of what happens at the public beach at Leith. Over the years, I and my friends have launched our boats at the river launch with no difficulty. Under the proposed plan, there is definitely no way that a truck and a trailer with boat could be launched there. The staff's solution to go fishing by boat off of Leith is to drive the 7 kilometers to Owen Sound, then boat back the 7 kilometers to Leith, and then once finished fishing, boat back the same distance to Owen Sound, and then drive back home. This is a total distance of 28 kilometers and 1.5 hours time and $30 in gas and launch fees. This is an unacceptable recommendation. Why is the onus put on us to accept this solution? Why is the onus to accept the solution put on us, the local residents and users of the current boat launch ramp? I attended the council meeting of June the 10th, 2019, and saw the crowd of people who came out to show their opposition to this proposal. Since then, the Committee of the Whole have assisted the proponent in his proposal and have made the 2 recommendations to council in report DEV 2019-10. Number 1, refuse the exchange and transfer of part of the beachland public beach at Leith. And part 2, provide support to the proponent in a new plan, which still involves an exchange and transfer of land. The second recommendation is in direct conflict with the first. Which is it? Not to an exchange and transfer of public land? Or maybe? Why, after spending time, taxpayer money and resources on this proposal, would the staff want to continue the process? When the proponent purchased the property, he knew the history of the property and its limitations for expanded commercial development. Buyer beware. Why should we, the local residents and taxpayers of Meaford, give up part of the Leith Beach to accommodate what was a poor real estate decision by the proponent? I realize that one of Meaford's stated visions is to grow the economy, but why do it in an environmentally sensitive beach area and public park? There are other properties throughout the municipality that could accommodate a pub. One environmental issue that concerns me is the proposal to locate 9 sewage holding tanks and 360 feet of buried septic lines so close to the water line. In February the 2nd, 2011, there was a massive ice jam at the Leith Beach and Rivermouth. I took a short video of the size and extent of the ice jam. I brought the stick with me to present it as a visual, but apparently according to the rules, I have to apply 2 weeks in advance to have it shown. Well, the report was only issued last Wednesday. I couldn't have 2 weeks to apply, to submit this video. So I'm asking now, can I present this video?
No.
I can, okay.
Yep,
Pardon me?
you could in 2 weeks.
In 2
You
weeks,
could come
yeah.
back.
I'm just pointing out that I haven't had 2 weeks to look at the report. But if I can't show the video, at least I can paint a picture in your mind. I'm standing on the Leith beach, looking at the building from behind, and off to the left is a river, and it's choked with slabs of ice that are approximately 3 feet high. And as I pan to the left, all the way down to the entrance, to the exit of the river, there's all sorts of ice. Go around to the back, facing the shore, and there's ice built up there. And I come back around to the beach, and some of the ice has been driven up onto the beach, and I come back to the original view of the start. And my comment is, bear in mind that this was when the water levels were approximately 3 feet lower than today's water level. Imagine how a similar or larger future ice jam would impinge upon the proposed septic tanks and lines located so close to the shore. It would be a disaster waiting to happen.
Mr. Seaman, can I ask you to go to wrap up, please? Your time is up for your
Okay,
presentation. Thank you.
in closing, I would ask for a show of hands from the public. Who is in favor of this proposal? Who is against this proposal? Thank you. In closing, I would ask council members to carefully consider to carefully listen to the voices of their constituents and neighbors and vote against any land transfer or rezoning proposals. Thank you for your reconsideration. Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
And
Appreciate your
here's,
comments.
Here's a copy
Next
of my
up.
letter for the clerk. Who do I hand that to?
There's the
Thank you.
And Ms. Marnie Koch, if I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Welcome, Marnie.
Good afternoon, Mayor Clumpus and councillors. This deputation expresses my firm and unequivocal stance in opposition to the sale of any portion of the public property known as Leith Beach, the relocation of Mr. Liddell's private property within that plot, and the change in a permit to allow for any increase in the seat number of a restaurant. In my previous presentation, the following concerns were articulated: the sale of public property, safety of Leith villagers and tourists, the safety and environmental protection of the water, air, and noise levels in a residential area. You think Mr. Moore has problems. And the need to be stewards of our natural heritage. Leith Beach is a rare and precious natural resource of the municipality, used for recreation and respite. As the rising waters of Georgian Bay gobble up more of the land space on this small plot, what's left becomes even more valuable to preserve. The vision of the municipality in its official plan states, the municipality has a number of significant environmental and topographical features that contribute to the sense of place felt by many of the municipality's residents. These features include the Georgian Bay shoreline. It continues on to say, the protection of these attributes is a key underlying principle in this official plan. And for this reason, this official plan establishes an environment-first philosophy in the municipality. This means that protecting significant natural heritage features and functions shall take precedence over development. To me, that really says it all. I urge you to maintain that focus. Throughout the official plan, many objectives address all of the concerns the next door neighbors and Leith Beachers have about this proposal. As councillors, I'm sure you have the plan memorized, so I will only mention just a few of the pertinent objectives within it. To begin, D 4.4 public parkland. It is the objective of this plan to maintain a system of public open space and parkland areas, enhance existing parkland areas, ensure the appropriate amounts and types of parkland are acquired, encourage the dedication and donation of environmentally sensitive lands into public ownership to ensure their protection is continued. For the life of me, I can't imagine what person in their right mind might want to donate land in the future to our municipality if any portion of this property is sold to a private individual. The hypocrisy is blatant. Section B 2.5 provides examples of land use in rural settlements. Current businesses in Leith would have 1, 2, maybe 3 vehicles at any one time in their driveways, predominantly during the day and throughout the week. The one institution, Leith Church, is used sporadically for a variety of functions and is located away from the village center. We are standing up today to say that the plot of land at Leith Beach is not the right place for a 50-seat restaurant, whether or not it falls within the permitted uses of a rural settlement area. Rather than entertaining a proposal to provide privilege to one resident, the municipality should consider taking a similar approach to that of the township of Georgian Bluffs in their renovation of an outstanding public beach on the opposite shore. Meaford could purchase the residence and with partnerships of community organizations, enhance the offerings of this small public beach. One local resident suggested a fine idea of employing youth at a seasonal snack bar and watercraft rental area. The sale of this property to a private individual for their business, one that almost doubles in size that of the past business from 34 to 50 seats, should not be acceptable. This whole plot of land is only half the size of the minimum requirement for a new residential lot along the shoreline, according to the official plan. That's a residential unit. The use of the private property at the beach has mushroomed over the years, from snack shack to convenience store to small restaurant. Surely common sense tells us that a restaurant with a viable size is too big for this property. Needing more space is a clear indicator. The official plan has objectives about the role of the municipality in steering businesses to suitable property sites in urban areas where water, sewage, and other infrastructure supports are currently available. This small gem, 0.7 of an acre, and getting smaller, is not the place for fulfilling one man's dream to the detriment of the next door neighbors, residents of Leith, and all of Meaford. I respectfully urge you to demonstrate that you are excellent custodians of this piece of heritage property. The municipality has a responsibility, as identified in the official plan, to ensure the park is not only maintained for the public, but is well and lovingly cared for all to enjoy now and in the future.
Thank you, Marnie. I really appreciate your comments. Next up, we have Rudy Mayer. Sorry, Rudy, have I pronounced your name right? Meyer, thank you.
German. Good afternoon, council members, council. Back in June, we had a meeting here where a lot of us were concerned about this development. I think there was about 150 people here who were all against it and one was in favor. You people are elected by the residents and you're supposed to work with the residents, not against us. I think we all had a lot of saying at that time. So now, I just read this thing yesterday about this new proposal. Does that mean that his original proposal stays the way it is? Just the restaurant is going to be smaller?
No. Oh,
Is the building, is the whole thing going to be moved?
can you speak to that?
It doesn't say very much in that regarding the original. You turned down the original application, and then you said that we were going to change it to a smaller building. So does the whole thing stay where it is?
We can ask Liz to respond to that.
Sure. So there is no new proposal at this point in time. It's turning down the proposal and then setting up principles to evaluate it.
Okay, well, there shouldn't even be a new proposal, because I think in the June meeting, there was discussion to have a roundtable meeting between some of the residents, the person that bought the business, councillors and everybody. That hasn't happened, and yet we're getting this notice now that this guy wants to change it. If you want to know what a 50 restaurant area needs, is go down to Kettles on Highway 6. Okay, it's maybe a 60-seat restaurant. Take a look at his septic system. It's twice or 3 times the size of this building. Where are you going to put that down there? Just first start. The pipes that were suggested in that meeting, when it rains, there's 2 huge puddles right in that area, and the water sits there for days on end. Where's the water going to drain to? Georgian Bay. Regarding this idea of us using a boat ramp 7 kilometers away, somebody already mentioned it, but these are my notes. So you got to first drive down to the Bay Shore, put your boat in, nice calm day, come down past Leith. All of a sudden the wind blows up. Now you're asking for a small craft to work its way all the way back into Owen Sound. First of all, that's a hazard. And we have the boat ramp now for Sydenham. Let's keep it that way. Doesn't take much to fix it. I've done it numerous times. I owned that business in 84 to 90 something. I dredged the river out. Didn't cost me a fortune. Nowhere near the price it costed to look after that Meaford Hall. I dredged the channel. We fixed the boat ramp. Township came and put a few bits of rocks around the river edge. So first of all, I'm totally against any changes. If the guy wants to build a restaurant, he knew it before he bought it that it was a restaurant. That's what he said here at this meeting in June. And then he came back to look at it, and it was a residence. And then he thought, oh, well, I'm going to build a restaurant. A restaurant will not work, let alone the size that he's after in this day and age. And I live in Annan. We have our only public access to the bay is that little spot of land there. I don't want to have to travel to Owen Sound. I don't want to have to travel to Meaford to put a boat in the water. If any of you councillors were down there in the summer on Saturday or a Sunday, you will see or have seen that there is no parking for 50 guests in a restaurant. The parking lots were full with people using the beach. That's our beach. And I don't think council, I can say maybe, I don't think council has the right to give any part of that to anybody. And I hope that if this comes to council again with his new proposal, that we have this roundtable meeting, and so we all get another say in it, which I don't even know why we're here today, because when 150 people are against it, which was pretty well everybody that was in this room at that June meeting, now we're back again here debating this thing, and it just shouldn't happen. A restaurant will never work there. You can take my word from previous experience, and that's the way the beach should be left.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Appreciate your comments. John Liddell is next on the list.
I guess I'm the one for it. Mayor,
Welcome.
Council, I've just made some notes. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to clarify a few issues, a couple misunderstandings. I'll keep it short. I know there's lots to be done. The intent of this land swap is and has never been to involve any aspect of the actual beach. That is the beach land north of the wooden posts. The beach is protected under GSCA and a 15-meter setback line. So that the beach, the sand area, has nothing to do with this proposal. What I'm asking for is to purchase 15% of the actual area of Leith, and that is only for a new septic system, and the septic system will be covered in grass, and ironically, there is currently a portable outhouse and a garbage located there. So why relocate the restaurant? Environmental, it's come up a few times. The ice. Greater distance from the river to the building, more river access for the public. The entrance is currently located within the hazard lands associated with Bothwell Creek per GCSA recommendations. The current building encroaches on the current Gray Road 15 road allowance. Number 3, improved visibility and access to beach and parkland. Visitors currently do U-turns or miss the park entirely if they have not visited previously. The improved in-out driveway would be much safer, especially for new visitors to the area, and it allows for enhancement of the vegetarian buffer along creek per GSA, CA, and flood control. Number 5, allow for entrance to be reconfigured and allow for safe pedestrian access. Worth noting, the current entrance encroaches on the current lot and is unsafe for children as cars enter. Finally, wanted to say my family is 100% dedicated to making the business a success. Self-financed, the restaurant itself will be second to none and built with historic design that Leith deserves. We will hire local staff that will be as proud to us to serve the community. Farm to table is our dream that can only be realized with an open mind. Tourism is obviously a very important part of the business plan, but being a responsible member of the community is of the greatest importance to us. I would also like to highlight page 11 under staff commentary. Staff identified the potential opportunity for a land trade, which I support 100%. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Liddell. And last on this one is Donna Mitchell. There you are.
Thank you. I'm a little ill-prepared for what I'm about to speak with, but here goes anyway. I'm here to speak about the allocation of, on the agenda of number 10 and 11 under the agenda today, where it talks about approving the allocation of $308,243 from the 2016 to 2018 operating surplus, and also monies potentially from the 2019 operating surplus. There was a meeting back in early summer. I thought where we capped the budget for the library building fund, and that was a bit of a go around to get to that figure, whatever it was. And now all of a sudden we're potentially adding another significant sum of money to that. We're talking about a little park over in the area, over in Leith, that hasn't been maintained for how many years, but yet all this funding is potentially going to the library, which, will we ever get there? I don't know. I guess that's up to us, but I am concerned that this money keeps funneling in potentially, and it just seems to have no cap on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Appreciate your comment. Okay, moving on to public questions for 2 minutes each, and we have 2 of them. Tom Buck is the first one.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor and council members. My name is Tom Buck, and my residence is 239 Cedar Avenue in Meaford. I'm the president of the Sunnyside Beach Cottage, member of Save Georgian Bay. I'd like to humbly request 3 minutes for this.
The public questions are 2 minutes, sir.
I'll be limited to 2, okay?
Thank you.
So, TC Energy has proposed a massive pump storage plant that will occupy several hundred acres on the Department of National Defense property. It will draw water from Georgian Bay into a reservoir on top of the hill across the bay with 1,300 megawatts of energy and drop it back into the bay to generate 1,000 megawatts of energy. Our association formed a group to study it and challenge it. I've heard that our effort has branded us as a small group of cottagers concerned about dirty water, the environment, fish kill, and high tension lines and other issues have generated over 5,000 people in the community who have signed the Save Georgian Bay petition on change.org, and we've just started. As council members, I imagine you see the potential in the jobs, the tax revenues, and the contributions such a business may make to the community. It could be dramatic, but in your heart, I hope you know of the impact on the environment, residents, and the beauty of our landscape. Picture the high-tension wires running along the top of the hill along the 9th line that you'll look at every day from Meaford Harbor. And they will rim Meaford's border on its track to Barrie. We've assembled quite a team beyond just cottagers. We have many experts on energy and the environment. We have learned a lot in the past couple of months, more every day. This is not a good idea. TCE has left off half the story. They've shared the good news, but not the problems. According to our experts, there are far less costly ways to accomplish this energy balancing for Ontario. New technologies are available that are not nearly as intrusive, and this energy will most likely be sold to New York. This is an irrevocable 50-year decision. We've heard from council members that it's not your decision, sort of like saying if this turns out bad, it's not your fault. Please don't stand idly by. Why not join us to identify the truly best solutions for Ontario, for Meaford, and help us save Georgian Bay? That is my question.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. The last speaker I have is Nancy Melville, please. Hi, welcome.
I have nothing really written down, but what I wanted to just say is I live on the 3rd line across from the house that Russell Moore and Rose own, and that it's a good time to be looking at the bylaws at this point because it's tourism and residential needs combining together. And other townships have already looked at the process, and there is a good tax benefit for Meaford with the licensing and the bylaws to be enacted. So I'm just encouraging that that gets done, and also it's a pleasure to listen to all the other concerns that residents have to speak to council, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate your adherence to the rules and for sharing your comments with us. We really, this is a democratic process in action, and we're very pleased that you're participating in that. And so we'll move on now to item 6 on our agenda, which is council inquiries, and these are of a high-level inquiry for staff on governance issues. Councillor Bell, number 1.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and my question is to Mr. Chapman. First of all, not a question, but this is a kudo. I've noticed this summer into the early fall that the municipality has done some good husbandry by doing a second cutting of the ditch, the grasses that are along the side roads, and it looks really nice. It was a job well done, and I want to thank you, the department, for getting that done. That's good stuff. My question for you is library. Most of us that travel past the library, we see a lot of work underneath the floor. There's a lot of other items going on. My simple question is, at this point, is the library still on target for the numbers that we talked about when we said build the library?
Through your worship, at this stage of the game, it still is.
Anyone else? Councillor Kentner.
Perhaps it's supplementary because there is a lot of buzz in the community about all the holes in the foundation, and I believe that's just to provide the underpinnings for the foundation where needed. Is that the story? Or?
Through your worship, it is for some of the helical piles to go in, but it's also, fairly large chunks of the slab were removed so that all the conduit could be put in as well for electrical, plumbing, all the runs for technology, so on and so forth. So certainly a lot of work to remove that, dig out trenches, but still less expensive than removing the entire slab and having to re-pour.
Supplemental.
Yeah, well, just another question for Mr. Chapman, and that is, I was in Owen Sound this morning and observed a crew removing the detour sign for the Sykes Street Bridge, does that mean that the opening of the bridge is imminent?
Through your worship, as was posted on social media and put out through a media advisory, work is still being completed on the bridge and it's expected to be done by October 31st. We had signs that were taken down and detour routes that were removed for the weekend because we opened the bridge up for the craft show, which ultimately has, taken part of the reason why we've had to extend the contract longer into the season. But, as staff, we felt it was very important that traffic could flow well in the downtown core during this last weekend.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and two questions, if I may. First of all, Mr. Armstrong, in light of the presentations we had today questioning short-term rentals, and I know, and I'm trying to think how long ago it was, a year and a half, 2 years ago, is it that long that we that we talked about short-term rentals here, and that staff was going to look at doing a report, and I just wondered if there was any update on the status of such a report.
Yes, through your worship, the time I'm not too sure, but yes, council has passed a resolution requesting us to explore other options with short-term rental. We're in the process of doing it, a bit of time challenge getting it done, but we've also been discussing potential partnerships. Really what council's asking about is licensing something feasible because we have the zoning provisions in place already. That's a very expensive venture, so we've been looking at potential partnerships with that if that's the road we want to go down, and wanted to report very thoroughly to council on that. We hope to have something in the next couple of months on that for sure.
One more.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you, and thank you for that, Mr. Armstrong. And I guess my second question is to you as well. And recognizing that all of us around the Horseshoe have received many emails this past week and 2 weeks with regards to TC Energy and the project there. So I'm wondering if you can share with us and the audience what I guess the intentions are with all of that information, and if there are any updates you can provide to us from TC Energy. I know that our residents are deeply concerned and they're looking to council to provide some leadership and support and so on in terms of moving their comments forward to the TC Energy folks. And I'm just wondering if you can share any information or updates on, from your perspective on that.
Through your worship, first off, the TC Energy, as far as we understand, the new deadline for the preliminary comments is March, and we will be bringing a report back to council in advance of that deadline, and we'll be submitting a more wholesome report. When we received the original letter advising of the proposal, there was a very short time frame, so we quickly drafted up a letter highlighting some of the things we are looking forward to receiving more information on, ensuring there's public consultation, finding out more about the potential impact on our residents. So we've already highlighted those concerns in our initial response to them. So I guess that's where we are in the process. We have spoken to TC Energy about getting out and ensuring as much public consultation as they can, and they will be doing that over the next little bit, realizing that we have a March deadline for the comments to the Department of Natural Defense. I think that's where the current request to comments is currently at.
If I can just add to that, Mr. Armstrong, and that is that in every communication that we have seen from TC Energy, there is a communication portal to addresses to send public comments to. That I think has been distributed. I know they have assured us that they are more than anxious to talk with individuals and groups if they're invited to come to speak to groups and to individuals. So that is available to all of our residents as well. But specifically, if you want to have those addresses, the contact information, please just leave it with our clerk, with Hannah, and we'll get you that information. To send your comments and questions directly to the company and to D&D as well. And Ross, you had another question?
Perhaps send that up here. Steve first.
Ross, Councillor Kentner?
Yeah, I think I've thought better of my question. Maybe Steve has one here.
All right. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm not sure who this goes to. Has the municipality, or can the municipality, join the over 800 municipalities across Canada and acknowledge climate change? Is this something we can do without a motion being brought forward, or?
Through your worship, no, that's something that generally is led by councillors bringing a motion forward, and so if somebody wanted to do that, they need to do a notice of motion.
Thank you. I'll start that this evening. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we will move on then to the consent agenda. We have seen these items before in our last meeting, and so I would ask for a mover and a seconder if you so wish to put this on the agenda in its entirety. The first one is CAO 2019-19, creating a hiring of a legislative service assistant and a manager of strategic initiatives. The second one is COR 2019-05, is a budget framework to direct staff to prepare a draft budget, including an overall tax levy increase not to exceed 4.56%. And C is COR 2019-06, the award of tender for a specialized transit system operating from 24 hours per week, increased from 24 hours per week to 28 hours per week. Are there any of those items that anyone wishes to pull? Councillor Bell.
Item B, Madam Mayor.
B? Okay.
Item B as well, thank you.
Okay, all right. Then could I have a mover and a seconder, please, for A, CAO 2019-019, and C? Councillor Greenfield and Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to COR 2019-05, the 2020 budget framework. Councillor Bell, you asked to have that pulled. Will you move that, put on the table? And I need a seconder, please. Councillor Kentner. Okay, did you wish to speak to that first?
Thanks,
Councillor
Madam Mayor. Since we have a few folks in the audience this afternoon, and since comment was brought up about allocating monies, I would just like to make sure that the folks in the room know that this council, for a change, is going to be looking at the budget in two single-day aspects, that we will be going through the budget unhindered with other details that you're seeing tonight on an agenda. In years past, we have had many things on our plate the same evening as we're dealing with budgetary items, and for a change, this council is going to be delving into the budget singularity over a two-day period, and I look forward to folks coming out when we get into doing budget. And I would like to reiterate that this is the drafting of a budget, and so the items 10 and 11 about allocating funds from the past to something to be adopted, those are the very kinds of things that this council will be talking about when we roll up our sleeves and take a look at how we're going to take on the upcoming budget. So I invite you to stay tuned to when this council will be doing nothing but budget, and we'll be working at it, and that will be our single focus, and it's a change, and I know I personally look forward to getting into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Kentner.
I just have a comment on paragraph 2 on page 18 of the budget framework. Staff would further recommend using the remaining $185,000 to complete upgrades at Memorial Park based on the final outcome of the master plan, and in particular, funds would be used to deal with the failing breakwall, stormwater issues and so forth. This seems as if it's presupposing that the preferred solution is going to involve repairing the breakwall, but it seems to me that there was very strong public support for letting the North Shore go natural. So I just don't want to determine our future approach to Memorial Park based on the budget framework.
Mr. Chapman?
Through your worship, I don't think that this presupposes anything. However, if we want to naturalize the shoreline, which doesn't matter one way or another to me, the existing break wall as it is will not be able to stay. Like, it would have to be removed, and then you would put a bunch of large boulders in, and so it still comes at a significant cost. And with the erosion that's happening all along that shoreline, everything would need to be, you know, armor stoned and reinforced. So that's what the money would be used for if we don't actually put up a new break wall.
For your answer.
Okay, Councillor Vickers?
If I could ask for maybe clarification through your worship about the library, the number 10 and number 11, those monies are being directed to the debt of the library, I think, not increasing the total budget project. Would that be fair to say?
Through your worship, yeah, as far as Councillor Bell had asked as well about the budget, the total budget, the new budget that council just recently approved with the award of the contract was a total of $7.1 million. That is not going up at all. As part of that $7.1 million, there was a recognition that we would have to borrow about $3.1 million in long-term debt to pay for our share of that. So by using these surplus dollars, that reduces that $3.1 million. So we would have less long-term debt.
Okay. Anything further than that? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, items for consideration. DEV 2019-05, the 2019 Community Improvement Grant for 51 Sykes Street North. I have a mover and a seconder. Please, Councillor Bell. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Rob.
Thank you, Worship. As typically in a year, we come forward later in the year with some applications for CIP grant funding. This is one actually that we actually received last year, but there was oversight in getting it on the last round. So it's with regard to RBA Financial and some work they want to do out front. Some of the green tiles are falling off. They want to replace it. Some work around the windows, replace the canopy with a similar material. And then if you look up top, the green paint's falling off. So a new front to that. So they've asked for the funding. With regard to the amount of funding available from council, we've had someone who's not proceeding this year. As council will recall in the report, we pretty much maxed out the funding for this year, but we do have additional funding based on some applications that are going for. So we're in a position to recommend approval of this one going forward. There has been some questions with regard to heritage permit. Some of the work is exempt under our heritage plan. It exempts some work. Other works will require a permit. However, in accordance with the delegated approval bylaw of council, some of the works that we would consider minor at my jurisdiction can go through under a delegated approval, but then are reported to the Municipal Heritage Committee as approvals given under delegated approvals. So that's the process for this one going forward.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Questions? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Armstrong. Rob, is this building declared a heritage building or not? It's a relative new building compared to our main street. I believe this one was built in about 1929 after a fire demolished. So does that take it out of the heritage schedule?
Through your worship, actually we don't designate individual buildings as being specifically heritage buildings. Under the plan, they're identified as some are identified as having heritage characteristics. Not what we've designated as a district. And what the district plan, the purpose of the district plan is to manage change in the district to ensure that nothing takes away from the feel and look of the district. So that's how we review particular applications. But you're correct, this one is a newer building in the district and doesn't have a lot of the heritage attributes that some of the older ones do. So the evaluation on that would be a little different.
One more, sure.
If I may, thanks, Mr. Armstrong. I just hope when I get to be 90 years old, I'm considered you.
Councillor Kentner.
Through your worship, that said, section 4.3 of our policy on heritage speaks to alterations to non-heritage buildings in the Meaford Heritage Conservation District. So there's a fair bit of confusion here, and I just would like any clarification I can get as to, what falls under the purview of the Heritage Committee and what is a sort of an executive decision by staff.
Through your worship, I can do that. Obviously, I'll have to do probably a more wholesome review of the heritage plan and how it applies and how I evaluate minor versus major on that delegated. And probably the best way to do that is to the Heritage Committee itself, so there's understanding.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything else? Then I will call a question. All in favor of this report? And that is carried. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to go into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Kentner, Councillor Bartley. All in favor? Thank you. And the first one we have is the CAO 2019-20 Council Strategic Priorities. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Deputy Mayor. Seconder, please. Councillor Kentner, thank you. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to be able to bring forward to Council, First Committee and then Council, the consideration of the final approval of Council's strategic priorities. This document was prepared based on a number of sessions with Council. We started back in December 2018, where we started with some high-level stuff, built some focused areas. We went off to senior staff and discussed how we could action Council's priorities, came back to Council a few weeks ago, actually last week I think it was, came back to Council and sort of reviewed those action items. Some adjustments were made based on that with Council, and we're now in a position to have Council consider your strategic priorities for going forward. I would highlight in there is that under the growing our economy or the economic development section of this, there's not any action items that are provided. This is on the basis that the future economic development strategy, which we expect later this year, will identify those action items, and then we'll be back to Council to adjust the strategy to incorporate those recommendations coming out of the economic development strategy.
Right. Thanks, Rob. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank staff for allowing me to take part in these special sessions. I really enjoyed them. I got more insight into the municipality, and I will accept this as a guiding document, and a guiding document to guide us going forward, as long as it doesn't force us into the poorhouse. Thank you.
Anything else from Council? Then I will call a question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Shirley, did you have a question?
Your Worship, I'm a little late to the table perhaps, but yeah, I wondered if I could ask a question, and probably it will come out in the work plan, but I'm just wondering, under leading a municipal government, if it's too late to discuss adding one more point.
This is Committee of the Whole, so you can raise a point, Council can have a discussion, and then if Council agrees, we can adjust it and bring it back at the Council meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, and
sorry, through your worship, just to add that we have made every effort to try and restrict it to 2 per section in each of these to try and make it a bit of a manageable plan. So personally, I would encourage that if we were going to add something, we might take something away as well. But
Okay, Your Worship, then, not to make things complicated, because my guess is that this will come out in the work plan, but my thought was in relation to staff, and wondering if there could be something related to employee satisfaction and retention, thinking in this market where it's difficult to come by and maintain great staff. And I wondered if we might, have some sort of internal survey or something of that nature that would really help us understand how staff love their jobs, and if there was any way that we can improve that, just, to retrain great staff. And thinking through that, I guess a focus on customer service as well within the organization, and just wondering then if that could be considered within the work plan of some way of giving staff the opportunity to speak up and to bring their thoughts forward and to have them heard, to help them to feel, appreciated, and that goes a long way towards staff retention.
Through your worship, I recall in our discussions on the one of the charts or whatever up there, that it was highlighted by council to the value of staff and that very point. Actioning it, I guess we'll have to maybe leave it with staff, and we'll review how we could potentially action it or balance.
I'm going to leap in again as sort of I've been looking after the HR group for a little while and only just recently passed that back over to Rob, and to say that these are very much council's strategic priorities, and I think there's a tier beneath all of these, which is the senior staff's strategic priorities as well, and certainly that work about engaging our staff and succession planning and retention and so on is certainly key to the work that I've been working with Val, and I know that Rob is continuing to do so with the rest of the team as well. And so I think that's sort of a core part of what we do on the next level down, and whilst I'm sure staff will be delighted to see it in a document like this, I think it kind of fits in underneath all of the existing priorities.
Okay, thank you. Then I will call the question. We all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Community Services, COM 2019-06. The CSW BP development. My goodness. It's got to have a name. Yes, it does. Let's spell it out. Community Safety and Well-Being Plan. And a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Kentner, Councillor Bartley. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Matt.
Yes, through your worship. As you say, it needs a different name. Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is quite the mouthful, and you'll see in the report that is one of the things that we've been talking about and we'll be looking to sort of get some ideas for over the next little while. The report in front of you is very comprehensive. Hannah has put this together, and I will turn this over to her in a moment for just a little chat about the timeline. But before I did so, I just wanted to very happily announce that Hannah McCullough has agreed to take on a secondment for the next 12 months, for the months of January to December 2020, to lead the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan development. That is really good news for the municipality. It means we have somebody who is well-versed in Meaford as a community and in some of the analysis and the customer service that we very much need for this, and she'll be taking a lead for that under my direction and working with the various committees that the report discusses. So with that, I'll pass it over to Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking this on.
Thank you. I'll try and keep this to kind of the Coles Notes version because the report was 11 pages. I apologize. So this is kind of a preliminary information report on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plans development for 2020. The report touches on 5 or so main tenets for the plans development. So these include public consultation efforts, identifying vulnerable sectors in our community and researching our local priority risks, identifying existing programs and services and exploring these underlying program weaknesses or possible gaps in the service, compiling and maintaining a data set of our local findings, and lastly, developing strategies for implementation in our community. So this would be through partnership with both committees and community service partners. So these kind of main tenets will intertwine through the plans development, and they're going to occur at varying stages throughout 2020. So the timeline that we've included as an appendix is just kind of a rough draft version of this. The internal project team is going to be putting together a more detailed timeline for the future. So this will ensure that, one, we remain on track for development during 2020, not only because we have staff contract limitations and our time constraints, but also we need to ensure that we meet the mandated deadline for the plan development for 2021. So it's our hope that this report will give council kind of a general overview of what to expect, during the plan's development for 2020. And hopefully if there's any questions, Matt or I can try and answer.
Very thorough report, Hannah. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Hannah. And good news that you are going to remain in a position. And I would just like to say, Hannah, don't apologize for having an 11-page report. This councillor enjoys a full, in-depth, accurate report. A lack of a report is more concerning than reading a few extra pages. I would like to say that this is going to be something which is really, it is really going to be important in our community. And I know that part of that engagement, and a part only of it, will be the police committee that we have. That will be comments that will be joined into this one as the big umbrella. So when we have our policing meetings with the inspector, those comments will be forwarded on, and it forms part of the overall. So the police committee is an important aspect, and I'm glad that you are going to be involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Through your worship, just to expand on that, the policing committee absolutely is a key part of that. As part of her role, Hannah will continue to provide some support to that committee as well, so that we have that direct link. And it's certainly my intent that we'll recommend that a public member of that committee is part of the statutory advisory committee for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, so that we have that linkages between those two groups. And of course, the inspector or his delegate will have to be part of that organisation as well. So definitely a pretty tight link there.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, looking at the costing of this plan, I see where the 2020's money is coming from with the police reserve budget. So for the next 4 years, would there be another $100,000 each year put towards this?
Through your worship, that is what our initial proposal discussed, absolutely. We haven't included detail in this particular report because, of course, until we start to develop that plan and start to figure out what the recommendations of the plan might be, it's pretty hard to judge what that is. There will need to be some investment, whether that be through municipal programs or through partnerships with other organisations, but the 100,000 figure that we talked about a few months ago is very much a round number that's rather a guesstimate at this stage.
Thank you. And where would that money come from? Through the budget process at a tax increase?
Through your worship, it would be all of the normal sources, whether we could do it through the operating budget or whether there was grants available. One of the things that the ministry has been very clear about is that municipalities will only be eligible for grants if they've done this. And so my hope is that if we have done it and we've done it well, then we may be able to get some money from grants. But yes, otherwise, any future programs would have to be funded in the way that all of our programs are.
Thank you, sir. And I do understand this is a necessity. It's not that something we want to do, it's something that we have to do. But we do have the option to take in the Grey Counties plan, do we not, at no cost?
Through your worship, we do. That process has started with Grey having gone through the direction that Council gave at the last meeting. My feeling would be about future costs is that, yes, we may get zero cost out of going with Grey right now, but we wouldn't have a plan that would properly impact our community, and particularly the smaller parts of our community. And we would still have to invest money afterwards in order to implement any programs.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to either Hannah or Mr. Smith. I guess first of all, I'm surprised that the present provincial government is pushing this. I'm pleased that they are, but I am surprised. I sit on our municipal accessibility committee, and I can I just imagine accessibility is going to be a major part of this, and I'm hoping that our committee, and we've got some excellent people, members of the public involved in that, and I'm hoping that we will get every opportunity to get in on this and hopefully make for improvements.
I fully expect that during the course of 2020, every single municipal committee and board and group will have the pleasure of either my or Hannah's company so we can get their input.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, congratulations to you, Hannah. Very much appreciate the depth of report, answers most of our questions as we go through it. And I have said before, but again, I'm just so pleased that we are moving forward to do this within the municipality, because I think we have such an opportunity to help so many vulnerable people. I just wondered if I could ask Matt or Hannah, in relation to the structure of the committee, is this actually then a committee of council? And if so, then will you be inviting a member of council to participate in any way?
Through your worship, if you'll excuse me choking slightly. This is a statutory advisory committee, so yes, would be formed as a committee of council. At some point in the next few months, we'll bring forward a list of recommendations for appointments based upon the requirements that the Act sets out, plus people like the CPAC committee. One of those requirements is that there must be at least a member of council, and then we'll appoint them, and then all of the meetings will be like every other meeting of council, so there'll be public session, they'll be open to the public to come and listen, and hopefully have some participation in as well.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, the rest of the council, for the conversation. I still stand that unless I know where the money's coming from, or whether we can do this within our budget now that we have, I cannot support spending this much money when we do have a free option. So I will not. I know the thing that Hannah or the staff would come up with would be a better document, but I don't think the price tag is worth that. Thank you.
Councillor Kempner.
Where were you when we voted on this, Mr. Bartley? We voted as a council to take this route over and above the county council approach, because it would be so much superior in helping our community.
In addition to that, once the county has their official plan, it's a global template, and I think each municipality is required to have their own version of that plan, and so there would be costs attached to that as well. So we have to keep that in mind. But I certainly agree. I think this plan going forward is going to have a huge implication for our community, for our whole community, dealing with some of the social determinants of the issues that we are faced with, from policing and so on. And we just don't know what we have at that level in our community, and this is what we're going to find out through this plan. I think it's a great initiative going forward, and finding the financial cost for that, I think, as Matt has indicated, there will be grants available and other forms of revenue coming through.
It was a very good presentation at AMO. Halton presented, and they already have developed their plan, and they laid out how they did it, and it's sort of like a template for how all other municipalities can proceed. But it's just based on the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and the money that could be saved over time by finding out your vulnerabilities and your people at risk and so on, and your solutions for them, and closing gaps, is going to be very important. And there's no comparison between buying into a county program and doing our own.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank Councillor Kentner for pointing out we did vote on this, because if you remember back, I didn't vote for going forward with their own plan. I thought the county plan would have sufficed. I know we will come up with a better plan. I understand that. And an ounce prevention costs us $500,000. So I'm just not going down that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Anything further? Then I will call a question. All those in favor? And those against? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to Corporate Services, COR 2019-07, the 60 stairs connecting link. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vickers. Who's going to take this one?
Yes,
Darcy.
through your worship. This is just an information report to council to make you aware of an issue that we as staff have been trying to deal with recently. I think, from our perspective, the biggest thing is to let council know that from a service level perspective, we are actually going to adequately sign the stairs for this winter and fully block them off. Although they weren't maintained in the past, they were never blocked off, so they will be blocked off because we can't maintain them in the winter. And more importantly, at a cost of probably $150,000 or more to replace those stairs, it's certainly something that we are going to have to consider whether that's a wise use of dollars when the time comes for those stairs to be replaced.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to Darcy, actually, I went up and down them stairs, so you can take 2 off the counter. That was me. Without proper counts, I actually thought you'd already replaced the stairs because the stairs look in great shape to me. I see 0 wrong with them. Like I said, I'm not an engineer or a welder, but I went up and down them, I got under them, I looked at them. They look in great shape. I don't know why we'd replace them, but I can't make a decision on something like this until we get a count on what's there. There's another path that goes off to the side, looks more traveled than the stairs do. So if we have to make a decision on this, I'd like to defer it until we have the count done. Thank you.
Through your worship, the count for...
The amount of traffic on the stairs.
Oh, certainly. I think we could set up some kind of a people counter and...
It's set up now. It says in there there's a counter set up, but they don't have the information yet.
Yeah, actually the counter has not been set up yet because we're still trying to get our hands on the counter. The issue is that we understand the traffic or the pedestrian flow that happens on Paul Street and also on Edwin Street, but those that actually use that stairs, we've yet to be able to determine it. You're right that the stairs do look in good shape. That's because Parks and Facility staff went out there and repainted everything, put the yellow lines on every one of those step bars that you went up and down. We had a welder out this year to do a bunch of welding because there were a couple breaks along the rails. At the end of the day, there's no expectation of getting rid of those stairs right now because they're meeting a minimum level of safety. The issue is that they are not compliant. That's the biggest thing. So from a design perspective, the stairs themselves, each stair is not wide enough, and more importantly, under a new design, the maximum number of stairs that you have before you have a landing is 10 steps. So that's why, at some point in time, if we're going to keep that access point, it's going to be a completely different redesign. Irrespective of the number of people that go up, at some point we're probably going to be forced into having to do something with those stairs if we want to keep them there.
Okay, thank you. How wide is the step supposed to be? They must be a foot wide now.
Through your worship, I honestly couldn't tell you. This is just what's in the engineering report, and they're looking at all the design guidelines to understand. I don't think it's the depth of the stair. It's the fact that the staircase itself is not wide enough. Not each stair being 12 inches, not the depth of the stair, but the width of it.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'd like to know them figures because it's 4 feet wide. And if you're looking for your counter, there's 2 cameras set up now. I don't know whose they are.
Good.
Through your worship, off the top of my head, from an accessibility point of view, I believe it's 18 inches that a step has to be deep in order to meet compliance.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Mr. Chapman. I've been past this stairway a gazillion times, and of course, always making a full stop at Victoria Crescent stop sign. I have ample opportunity to take a look at the stairway, and I honestly have never seen anyone using them, except on occasion in the winter when some young people are tobogganing down part of that hill. They do scamper back up the stairs some way. I guess this goes back to the community wellness plan, that things like this are something we need to have in place and keep in place. And but anyway, it's just to accept the report for information, and
That's right.
we'll deal with it perhaps further in the future.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to speak to the usage of the steps, I lived in that neck of the woods for about 15 years, and it was a regular part of my walking route, and I always felt that they were quite well used. The one thing I would request, if possible, is if there could be a garbage can somewhere in that vicinity. There's, thinking of the cleanup, there's always a considerable amount of litter underneath those steps. That's not really related to this report, though. But I wondered if I could ask about the winter. There's a suggestion here that the steps will be closed. I'm wondering if that means that they're fully closed, or if they will sort of be available to use at one's own risk, or how they're going to be blocked, because I think they are well used in the winter as well. They're for folks who like to work out. I know that some folks use those and go up and down them 10 times or more if they can as part of their workouts. So I just wondered about the winter closure.
Through your worship, they will be fully closed. So they will be barricaded at both ends. We have found ourselves with enough extra rolls, let's say, of snow fencing that we will be blocking off the stairs to use completely, so that they won't be maintained. And in reality, when we go back and talk to staff, some of our staff members in the transportation services crew who have been around long enough remember being a wingman in an old town plow, because back in the day there was actually 2 staff members in each plow truck. One would operate the truck, the other one would operate the wing. At the end of doing the in-town route on the wingman would always get dropped off and would actually have to shovel all of those stairs off. Since 2002, that has not happened. So the stairs have never been maintained. They've always been closed. Once, Mother Nature gets here and there's a bunch of snow, they've never been shoveled off or anything. So we're just making sure we want it posted that there's no winter maintenance of the stairs, and we will be blocking it off so that, people can't use them and then fall up or down them and get hurt.
Councillor Kentner.
Through your worship, I understand, the liability issue, but I wish we had some numbers in a winter, which I think is about at least 3 months. There must be, 35% of the time there is no snow, and on those days, people might like to, cut a mile off their route. And if there's a sign, they can decide if it's they want to take the risk. But if we wrap it up in snow fencing like we did our parks, we might find ourselves taking it down again.
Through your worship, I could say that my greatest concern is actually on those days where there is no snow, because we are seeing significant fluctuations in the weather, more so than we did back in 2002 when we stopped maintaining those stairs. And it's the freeze thaw, and the rain and the mild weather that's really the cause for concern. Because if the stairs are buried in 2 feet of snow all winter, people know they're buried in 2 feet of snow. You're not going to be able to use them. But when it looks like they're free and clear, and they're really not, and there's a significant trip or slip hazard, that's when the municipality becomes liable. And we actually have a proper maintenance program that meets provincial standards for all of our sidewalks, yet we still typically deal with between 2 and 4 liability claims every year. So this is one of the ones that I don't disagree, it would be a nice to have, But from a liability perspective, on stairs in the winter that are not maintained, these need to be closed properly. Use the sidewalks. We have lots of sidewalks that people can go up and down and train on all they want instead of using stairs.
Okay. Yes. Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I have to agree with Darcy on this one, and I'll back him on it in the future. You can't throw salt on these steps. They're full of steel holes. If they were iced, they're going to remain iced, and it would be a liability. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. And just to echo Councillor Kentner's comments, I think anytime we put up that orange snow fencing, it's not going to go over well. I agree, a sign that says steps are not maintained, use at your own risk will suffice. And to my way of thinking, until we close the rocks, breaks, walls off our harbor, those are the most dangerous areas we have in the whole municipality. People walk out on those rocks all the time and there's no signs. We don't close them. And to me, this is how we should approach the 60 steps, is to just put up a sign, let people make their own decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything further? This is recommendation to receive this report for information purposes. I'll call the question. All in favor? And those against? And that is carried. COR 2019-08, Investing in the Canada Infrastructure Program for a Community Culture and Recreation Stream Grant application. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bell. Thank you. Okay, back to you, Darcy.
Mr. Your Worship, were we excited about this program? This is the one that we've been waiting on because it's for kind of the non-core infrastructure as part of the overall $30 billion plan. The first thought of this from staff, of course, was the library. If we can get the remainder of the funding and not cost us anything, boy, wouldn't that be a real win. Unfortunately, any project that has already started is not eligible. So we can't even apply for the library project. So we then started looking at all of our different facilities, recreation areas, parks, so on and so forth, and judging all of them against the criteria within the grants. So there are two different grant streams, one that is up to $5 million, and the second one is up to $50 million. So the $5 million program really is for rehabilitation of existing facilities that we have. The $50 million would be if we were actually interested in a new facility. So those are, there's really two different cycles here. The communities that want to rehab what they've got, or those communities that want to go and apply for a brand new multi-use rec facility or something like that. That's kind of how they've broken the streams out. So we're certainly not in a position to have a plan that could be justified for a new rec facility, so we started looking at all of the existing facilities that we've had. We looked at the criteria against things like Memorial Park because of the issues that we're having down there and whatnot. The problem is that with the issues that we've really got to deal with, the grant wouldn't apply for something like that. We looked at a lot of our facilities, and because we're going through a rationalization study right now, we really can't justify applying for money for those projects either. So what we really narrowed ourselves down to were two different projects that meet all the tick boxes within the criteria. One's a large project, one's a smaller project. And I think, within our long-term 10-year plan, both of them are in that plan right now. So the first one I'll talk about was Bogner Hall. Realistically, the facility condition assessment said we need to pretty much do a complete gut of the inside of that building and start from scratch. So it's about taking it right back to the studs, new insulation, drywalling everything, updating completely the kitchen and the basement, making sure that all the washrooms are fully accessible, so on and so forth. That project, well north of $300,000. We've had that in the budget for a couple of years now, and it's actually in the schedule for engineering in 2020 and construction in 2021. So we would be pushing forward that project as it is right now. The other project, slightly more money, about $4.8 million, is for the arena and community center. Not so much the community center side, though. What we're talking about is the arena proper. So we've known for a couple years now that from an accessibility standpoint, our existing facility does not meet accessibility. The dressing rooms, and we've done some very preliminary studies. There's no way to make the dressing rooms compliant on an inexpensive type basis. So this project really, what it would do is blows out the west wall, pushes it out into the parking lot, makes the hallway into the dressing rooms much wider so that it becomes accessible, and then all of the dressing rooms would be fully accessible as well. The best way to put that part of the project is what you end up with are nice big dressing rooms like Thornbury has, and in the viewing area up above on the ice surface side, there is fairly expansive void in behind there that a lot of people could congregate in. That's what we would end up with, something very similar to that kind of a design. So that it pushes out very close to the edge of where the parking lot is. So if you are up on the parking lot, there are a couple hydro poles that run along right there. That's pretty much where the building would terminate now. So you'd push it out that far. The other thing that needs to be done, these arenas are supposed to last 80 years, but the ice surface, the boards, and the piping for the arena, like the ice surface itself, don't last that long because of the brine that goes through it and everything else. Eventually it starts to decay. So this would be a large portion of this project is to completely redo the ice surface, brand new surface, all new piping, new dasher boards, the whole ball of wax, and then also some upgrades to the equipment as far as the ice making and dehumidification processes as well. And that's how you get to this massive number of $4.8 million. Ultimately, if we want to use, so there's two things. If we want to use the arena beyond 2025, if the province still maintains its accessibility requirements, we have to do this because the facility is not accessible. So from staff's perspective, these community-based for community infrastructure versus the water, sewer, roads kind of stuff, these grants don't come out very often. So we recommend applying for the arena because it's far better for us to spend 27 cent dollars on a $4.5–5 million project than it is applying for the Bogner Community Center, because we can actually incorporate that into our long-term capital plans and our financing strategies. We did not have a long-term plan for the arena because it's a large dollar amount. I mean, we're spending $600,000 a year, give or take, on our facilities in total. So to try and incorporate $4.8 million just for the arena, then everything else, we would do no maintenance on any other facilities for 8 years based on that type of approach. So we were struggling with trying to find a way to actually finance this. So that's why we're suggesting going with the arena project versus Bogner. But both of them would certainly qualify, and we wanted to give council options as best as we could for projects that we thought we had the best chance with through this funding call.
Thanks for that, Darcy. Any questions, any comments? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Darcy, for really for talking about the arena. I know that those of us that served on council before this one, we did put some money into the arena. We had that new flooring that's outside of the dressing rooms. I know that there was a crew in there. They did work on the headers and things like that. And we've had even a new system for the exchange. I think it is for the air quality. Is that the one there? So really, even though we've spent money recently on it, to qualify for this big dollar amount, it doesn't matter that if we've got something new in there fairly recently, it's going for the dollars to do a major overhaul, period. They do not care that we put something new in even last week. Got nothing to do with the application.
No, well, we have to recognize the life cycle of these things as well. So we've spent a few $100,000s on some of the ice making equipment. That stuff will still stay. We still had other ice making equipment that still needed to be replaced. The flooring was actually done 5 years ago. Typically only has a 10-year life cycle, a 12-year life cycle anyways, because, it skates walking on this stuff, right? So you know, ultimately our plan is to apply for this money and stagger the work. The work won't even happen until 2022, 2023 at best anyways. And it'll be done over 2 years so as to try and limit the impact that work would have on our revenue streams at the arena, so that we'd try and make sure that the work was done during the off season, during the summer months, so that ice can still happen. And then it doesn't put pressure on neighboring ice surfaces either, with trying to accommodate all of our scheduled ice time. But yeah, we haven't, I mean, last year we spent $10,000 on furnaces. It doesn't make a hill of beans. And I mean, I'd rather throw $10,000 away in order to qualify for, you know, $3.8 million worth of money. So,
Darcy, how much staff time would it take to mount this application? What kind of costing is this going to?
Well, I mean, we're going to make the application no matter what. Most of, you know, the work has been done, you know, because of the budgets and because of this report. So it just depends on which direction council goes. But the application really, whether it's for a $20,000 project or a $5 million project, it's the same amount of time from staff's perspective. I mean, we're probably talking, you know, 15 to 20 hours in total between Brady and the capital coordinators doing the back end work, and then those of us on senior management reviewing the application before it goes off.
Sure. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. And I'm wondering, fingers crossed, should we be successful, do you see then this becoming a year-round facility with ice time being offered all year?
Through your Worship, our facility could never be a year-round facility. It was never, I mean, it was never designed for year-round use. The roof system itself, like it couldn't accommodate the amount of, maybe it could, I mean, anything can be engineered, but I don't think it's worthwhile, the investment that it would take to try and insulate the building properly enough in order to accommodate ice time. Even 10-month ice, because as soon as you start getting into May and June, it becomes very, very difficult. Like Thornbury's arena, it was designed, you know, 15 years after ours, so and built then, so it's designed to a much higher standard, and even they have troubles with ice in September. So it would take far more than the value of the revenue that we would get back to make it worthwhile.
Anything further? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Chapman. First of all, this report is one of those ones that makes it so difficult for councillors, because you're looking at a facility in different parts of the community, and being asked to choose one over the other one. But anyway, that's part of the game. I just wondered, do you have any insider knowledge on whether the government is looking, or whether the grant process would be looking more favorably at big grants as opposed to small grants, or is everything wide open?
Everything is wide open. I think that our understanding is that these projects can be funded out until 2027. So I think that part of this program might be more, or at least in part, an exercise in cash flow, which is why we have strategically asked for money later on during the process instead of immediately, hoping that that might mean that our project is looked upon favorably, because we're not asking for all the dollars in the year one of the program, but further on. As far as any other component, I don't think that there is anything one way or another. I would hope that they will look at these projects based on the merits of the project, not based on the ridings, and will accommodate those projects based on who does the best job and who has the greatest need. I'd certainly like to comment on your first comment about pitting one area of the community against the other. I think let's be clear, from staff's perspective at least, we have a plan with 100% confidence in doing the work at Bogner Hall, irrespective of whether this grant application goes forward. We can afford to do that work. It is our plan to do that work. We've engaged the Bogner board already to try and find out when the best timing might be for them to do the work, so it mitigates their revenue loss as well. So we plan on doing that work. The reason that we brought forward the Bogner project was simply because it does tick all the check boxes, and it is a much smaller dollar amount. So if council is not comfortable with a large ask, this is a smaller ask. Now, that all being said, I have 100% confidence that we can fund the Bogner project. I have much less than 100% confidence that we could fund the arena project if we are not successful with this grant.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do see the arena project on future budgets already in the forecast going to cost a pile of money, and if we can get some free money and get us over the hump, I think we should apply for it. Now, my concern is the total cost of $4.8 million accurate? I would hate to apply for it, put some engineers together, and it comes back at 5.8, and we're only getting 75% of 4.8.
Well, through your worship, the maximum that we could apply for under this grant category is $5 million. So if it comes back at $5.8 million and we get this grant, we've left less than $200,000 on the table anyways. And I would hope that it doesn't come back that high, because if it came back that high and we didn't get the grant, then that's just that much more money that the community has to try and come up with to try and make sure that we still have an arena that's accessible. So Brady and his group have done, quite a bit of work already, because a lot of this stuff is annual budget prep anyways. So I think we're fairly confident in the number as it is right now. And we've even included some inflationary factors into it, because we recognize that we're not going to be doing this work, in 2020. It would be a few years out. So we've kind of learned our lesson on the inflation side of things with the library project already. So.
Thank you, Darcy, and I'm glad we've learned something and going forward. Now, because we've got to 2027 to spend this money if we were successful, is there a chance we could get the grant money, sit on it for a year or two, and mount a community money raiser for some of the other share?
Through your worship, I don't see why not. I think that we still need to make sure that we keep the engineering process going early on, at least, so that we can start hammering out the design and the numbers. And if we wanted to wait for a year or two, it's an application process to the government to extend, but we extend the grant deadlines all the time. I think our drop dead date on this project really wouldn't be 2027, it would be 2025, because we need to make sure that we're compliant from that accessibility. And maybe we could flip the process around based on what our understanding is. The expectation would be that we would have done the ice surface renos first, and then the dressing room and the building components second. But maybe we could flip that around and do the dressing room first, and make sure that we still hit that compliancy target by 2025, and then do the ice surface thereafter. This really would depend on what an engineer would say as far as, whether it's safe for us to extend the ice surface component that long, or whether there's a potential for failure. Because that's really what we're trying to limit on the ice surface side, is making sure that we don't have a failure in any one of those major components, and come mid-December and we've lost ice for the rest of the year, and then what happens to the community, right? So we're trying to make sure that we mitigate those potential liabilities.
Thank you, sir. And just the last comment, if I may. I know this doesn't matter a lot to the people on the western border of the municipality, but our neighbors Chatsworth didn't look after their arena, and they thought they could do without one. One of the biggest mistakes they've made. They've realized that. They're behind the 8 ball, and now they're scrambling to get another community center built back. And I think you do need it, and I will certainly back you on this. Thank you.
Okay, anything further? And I will call the question. Actually, we have to make a decision.
Through your
we'd like
worship,
to go to.
by calling the question, you would be giving approval to apply for the Meaford and St Vincent Community Centre and
Community
Arena
Service,
project.
okay.
If council wanted to do something different, somebody would need to propose an amendment to that.
All right, so that's what we're voting on then for the arena. Are all in favor of that project? And that is carried. Thank you, Council. Good discussion. The Bogner part of it is in the budget and will be tackled. It will be done.
So, yes, through your worship, you will see as part of the 2020 budget deliberations, there will be a project in there which includes engineering services in 2020 for the Bogner facility, and then 2021 construction. So, I mean, that project is solely dependent on council giving approval to actually provide the capital funding to do that work.
Okay, moving on to DEV 2019-01, the Leith Beach land sale request. Mover and a seconder, please put that on the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bartley. And over to you, Rob. You're going to turn it over to Liz. Thanks. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bell, I think if you appreciated Hannah's 11-page report, you must have been over the moon excited for this 16-page report. You know, it's interesting because I think, well, it was lengthy. It didn't really take a long time to write the report. There was a lot of thinking, and I think certainly I had made a point over the last few months since we were here together in June to make sure I drove by the site, to ask everybody in my circle, have you been there? What are your thoughts? And, you know, a lot of times kind of washing my hair, just mulling on Leith Beach. I do have some comments to share with you kind of around the comments that came up earlier today. And then I just have a couple of additional comments that I'd wanted to share just as I have kind of listened to what's been said. So first off, I guess in terms of why the report, why this approach, the report that has been provided to Council is really intended to summarize the request that was made by Mr. Liddell and the comments that have been provided to date by the public. It also includes an evaluation of the applicable policy, so that's our official plan policy for the most part, included some related staff commentary and some recommendations for items that should be considered, in my opinion, as part of any revised proposal. As a registered professional planner, my role is to provide Council with my independent professional opinion. And so I know a number of the comments have spoken to the fact that this report isn't neutral. That's right, it's not intended to be. It is an opinion. But in preparing that opinion, I am responsible to weigh the rights and privileges of the public, so both the vocal public and the silent public, the applicant, as well as those objectives and directions set out with the policy, within the policy documents. So that is meant to be a holistic evaluation. As noted within the report, I am of the opinion that the policy provides a basis on which that we could offer in principle support for a transfer of the lands and consideration of a zoning amendment for reasonable renewal and change of the commercial use at Leith Beach. That said, it is my recommendation that the initial request, as had been presented in June, be refused on the basis that it is too large and has the potential to limit the capacity of that site to fulfill all of those reasons that the Leith residents love that beach. I'm also of the opinion that many of the technical matters raised through public consultation can be addressed through revisions to the plan. And I think in particular the scale and the layout, so the proposal in general, needs some work. We do have various land use tools and controls that are available to us that we can apply to guide development. And I have outlined within the report a number of items that I think must form the basis for any revised proposal. With respect to some of the comments that were made today, I would just note that as with all applicants, application fees are payable to cover off the staff time associated with review and reporting. So that is not something that generally would be borne by the general taxpayer. That is an applicant payment that funds that. Secondly, and I think, I don't know if it's a misinterpretation or what, but at any rate, my comments regarding the boat launch, it was not intended to say that it was to be discontinued, I was rather attempting to highlight the fact that there isn't room for multiple boats and trailers and trucks all in that location, and that for larger vehicles, larger boats, or where there are multiple truck trailer combinations, there is another facility nearby. Not intending to say that's in replacement of the services provided at Leith, but just in addition to. With respect to parking, I know that 8 parking spaces had raised some question. My point there was that the gravel area is not structured currently. The 8 parking spaces actually reflects the 22-meter measurement between the boat launch and where the existing porta potty is located. And so that is 22 meters. So if you take our standard parking space width of 2.7 meters, that's where we get the 8 parking spaces from. I do think that with a rearrangement of parking, there would be additional. The 23 spaces that were reflected in the proposal by Mr. Liddell also included the on-boulevard parking within the road allowance. In addition to that, I just had wanted to note that while highly valued and well used by the public, the existing site and the arrangement of uses for both the public and private lands do have existing challenges and deficiencies that we will need to address over time. These challenges exist even in a do-nothing or sell-nothing scenario, and arise in part due to that existing layout and the delineation between private and public space. That is a fact that contributes to my in-principle support for a lesser transfer to try and address those specific site challenges. And I would say that regardless of Council's support for the recommendation number 2 within that report, I do anticipate that we will see a revised request at some point in the future, sooner or later, just because I think there are challenges that exist for any redevelopment, renewal, or change of Mr. Liddell's property. And so that recommendation I just wanted to highlight was included in the interest of clarity and as a commitment to apply the elements of a revised proposal that had been outlined within the report. And then finally, we were at the planners conference last week, and I attended a couple of sessions around places and placemaking. And I think as I reflect on that and my many shower thinking sessions on this particular proposal, I just wanted to highlight that despite the fact that my report does focus on addressing the technical matters raised through public consultation, I do appreciate that it's very difficult to specifically describe why we value a place. And when I think about the places that are important to me personally, I value them as if I have a relationship with those places. There's a meaning, there's narrative, there's attachment involved with those places. And so I think in the same way that I couldn't explain to you my love for my daughter by describing her physical characteristics, I think it's not something that we can expect the residents of Leith to articulate why they love that place by just describing its key component elements that they appreciate. And so I wanted to highlight that to council, that staff do understand and really do appreciate that this is a place. It's not just land, it's a place, and it's valued. And so that in looking at a future plan or proposal as it may come forward, that will be something that is factored into that evaluation and future recommendations by staff. So I'd be happy to address any questions or comments. Thank you.
Your Worship, if I could just expand, basically Liz did a good job explaining it, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that very early on in the process, Mr. Liddell, when he was talking about his building and his desire to create this special place that he had visioned, his original intent was to use the existing building and to do something. But then as the evaluation came along and looking at the existing building and cost to renovate, he sort of indicated to us at staff level that it appears he's going to have to tear down and build new. The current lot configuration is nothing that a planner would ever approve today in a layout. It's not functional, it's not correct. So we as staff saw this as an opportunity to look at him building a building, while at the same time our objective was to make the park, we we recognize the park as being a special place. We realize the park is important. As a planner, I think you hear time and time again that I would never promote selling parkland that would get rid of, or shorefront that would get rid of usable shorefront. But we saw this as a potential opportunity, subject to details, and that's sort of highlighted in the report, as an opportunity to make things better down there, potentially. And this exercise has been fully intended to do that, realizing that where we are today, that when the proposal came forward, it was a lot more than we originally anticipated once you get the septic and the size of building, and that's why Liz's report is recommending. But maybe there's something else that can work, realizing that it's really the septic that's driving the additional land in all, for all intents and purposes. So just wanted to give that bit of background to council as well.
Certainly, I'll get to Councillor Vickers and Councillor Kentner, but I just wanted to comment, Liz, on your comments and how valuable I think they are. I think this is something that we all can recognize and that we can all empathize with folks who have a special place in their hearts. And this is a very, very tough decision for us all going forward. We certainly want to be fair and equitable to all interests involved in something like this, but your words were very eloquent in terms of the importance of place, the importance, and we all know it from an economic development perspective, from a tourism perspective, and just from plain living in an area. We all value the places that are near and dear to our hearts, and they're very special places. So while we appreciate the interest from all of our visitors here today and those who have written in many, many times, and for all of those who live out there, we have to make a decision, and we greatly appreciate the work that has gone into providing clarity in terms of the issues, in terms of the intent going forward. So having said that, I'll open it up to give it council. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess one thing that did kind of stick out to me, even from the beginning, is the septic part of it. So if you go to page 20, I don't know whether Hannah or Matt can go, this doesn't look like a normal kind of a septic sort of a operation. And there was some concerns, and there were concerns of mine about having this large of a septic sort of a bed, but it doesn't seem like it's a typical septic system that we would put into our houses, sort of thing. So when you get to the discharge into the actual bed, how clean is it? Is the bed just more or less a spot to get rid of the almost clean water? Because if you go down to Talisman, you go down and you see how they're spraying the what's left over. I'm not exactly sure of the terminology. Basically what's left over from what comes out of their sewer system, and it's in a basically it's in a swamp down there, and it's like geez, like this can't be good. But obviously there's people that know more than I do about this sort of thing. So can you maybe but can you explain to us about the septic a little bit more? Because obviously it is a concern being this close to the water. That's not the page. Maybe yeah, there it is. Maybe I had the wrong page there.
Happy to speak to that. So with caveat, not a septic designer. But just in principle, so the system that they've proposed here is a Waterloo biofilter system, is my understanding, is what they were first looking at. And so my understanding is that there is some degree of separation and treatment within the tanks that are proposed, and then the finishing treatment happens within the distribution bed. I think there would be some additional refinements required, and I think just based on the land area for that septic, one of my suggestions would be to look at other options in terms of technology that might be available for that treatment. Additionally, I would note that the Conservation Authority has recommended that if they were to proceed with the septic bed on site, that they would want to see some kind of armoring along the water side of things. So I guess what I kind of picture in my head would be retaining block walls or something like that, which would have the added advantage of allowing for the septic system to be flat as opposed to sloped. I think at this point in time, I really think that this is perhaps not where we're going to end up, so I don't want to belabor it too much.
Right.
One of the recommendations that is within the report in terms of a revised proposal is around the sizing of the septic and further study depending on the flows that are anticipated. So, with 50 person is what we've had discussions about. They think that they could shrink down the size quite substantially if they were to go to 50 people. But I think with that, they were still showing flows in excess of 4,500 liters per day. So that in itself triggers a hydrogeological study where they would actually have to go in and do additional detail, looking at the system, looking at the groundwater, looking at that influence with the shoreline and all of that. So it's based on an actual design, but it's preliminary at this point in time, and I don't suspect that scale is going to be something that we would see in a revised proposal.
So can I just
Yeah.
So has Grace Auble then given approval? Maybe I didn't understand it right. They've made comment on it. And where does it go from
yes.
there? Like, you know
so
what I
so
mean?
within their comment, so this is like end state, right? The reason why they went through and did the septic design at this point is because we needed to have an understanding of those comments are based on the proposal that they had in front of them, and they had suggested that they'd like to see the armoring. So it's not that they've approved anything, but they've kind of said, if this is the proposal that you were to proceed with, we would want to see some additional site design work to include some armoring on the water side. Okay.
Councillor Kentner.
I think we're all here wanting economic development in Meaford, and that also includes Bognor and Leith and Annan and places like that, in my view. And I applaud staff for their efforts to try and facilitate some economic development in Leith and enhancements to the beach park. But I'm kind of disappointed that we haven't looked at one of the priorities that we have identified in our strategic planning, and that is the possibility of the municipality becoming a landlord and driving economic development in a very proactive way. So I would really like to see a third option, being that the municipality endeavor to acquire the proponent's property in order to first enlarge the beach park, Leith Beach Park, secondly, to make the beach a more visible component of the community of Leith, third, to facilitate safer traffic patterns and the boating launch, and to include a playground and washrooms, along with food services and recreational equipment rentals that could become a revenue stream for the municipality.
No, sorry. Comment, Liz?
Certainly, so we do have to, I guess we have some policy guidance that we work off of. That's through the official plan. So one of the things that I've noted, and we do have a review coming up next year, is that with respect to this rural settlement areas, the policies are quite generic. And so I think they lack the narrative around what are the places, why are they important, what is our focus in terms of if a property goes up for sale, are we trying to acquire that to add to a park or not? So I think through the policy review, that's a really good time for us to have some discussions around putting in additional detail for each of the settlement areas separately. I think they were really painted with a broad brush previously, and I know that in a number of the letters what's come up is comments around identity and the idea that this is our park, and our meaning the Leith residents. And I think there's some significant validity to that, because I really think that place and identity go together, and that's not articulated in our policy right now. Had it been articulated in our policy, that might have been something that would have been on the radar when the property initially went up for sale. So I take that as a suggestion in terms of looking at options, and I think certainly we can have the discussion and see if that is something that's viable as an option.
Okay, Councillor Bartley next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and if you may, I have four comments. Like Liz, when I wash my hair, I think. Face cloth. In defense of the staff, We had staff go to work for an individual. We have 11,000 people in this municipality, and I would hope that the staff would go to work for each and every one of them, whether their idea was good or bad, and they do their job on the legal aspect of it, not a personal decision. And our staff does that. For them going to work for this man, I applaud them. That's their job. And if it was me wanting to apply for something somewhere else, I want them to do their job. So in defense of them, the people have to know that they've done their job the way they were supposed to. Having said that, there was a comment came from the audience earlier that we don't care. That is so far the other way that it upset me, and I almost yelled back. And that would have been, I could have been gavelled, because that's not what this council does. Now, I've received probably 30 emails on this thing, and I appreciate 28 of the emails on the Leith Beach because they were very professional and whatnot. There was 2 that were downright derogatory and ignorant, and I got halfway through them and hit delete. And I will do that from now on if you're going to come to me with a derogatory or ignorant email. Having said that, I am a Leith Beach user, and going forward, I have zero interest in changing the Leith Beach as it is. I do caution you to bring in your elaborate plan, Ross, that you want to, because the little hidden gem would become too popular and it wouldn't be a little hidden gem anymore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Ms. Buck, and thank you, Liz. First of all, I know you've done a lot of work on it.
Sorry, microphone, please, Councillor Greenfield.
Sorry. Thank you, Liz, for your presentation and the work you've done on this project. I know you've spent a lot of hours on it. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I was out to the property. It's likely 3 weeks ago now, maybe even 4. And I just can't see this happening. If you go to the south and take property, you're taking away the only decent access or egress of the property. You go to the west, you have this elaborate septic system, quite advanced, quite modern, but I'm very worried, and talking with some Grey Sauble people, I think they have concerns about the location of this septic system. It is just on the borderline of the current wave uprush with the high water. At the end of July, the Deputy Mayor and I were informed by a water level expert that the Great Lakes waters were as high, almost as high, as they were in the late 80s, and maybe by the end of this year they would actually be higher. There's been some suggestions of some kind of a barrier wall, a concrete wall between the septic and the beach and the water. Well, we have seen with a concrete barrier wall in Memorial Park what happens to it when there's high water. Not a good idea. Go to the east, you know, the parking lot, already small. That's not going to work. It's not enough room there. Plus, I'm sorry, not the east, the north. And you also have to take away some of those very old coniferous trees that are in there. They're not huge, but they've been there for a long time. Supporting Telford Creek, Bothwell Creek, whichever name you want to use. Not a good idea. You go to the east, you end up out County Road 15. Where do you go? Where can you go? If this proposal had come up in the center of an urban area where you had both municipal water and sewers, you've got a sewer pipe that comes out of a building and into the main trunk line. It takes up very little room. This is an urban-type proposal in a rural community, in a rural municipality. It doesn't fit. What we're being asked is, it's not a planning question. Planning, yeah, maybe could jive. What we're being asked is, does the municipality wish to sell part of the Leith Beach property? My answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Please, Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, thank you. And really appreciate all the comments around the table so far, and I want to extend my thanks to the residents of Leith who have given up their time to provide council with their thoughts in lengthy emails in most cases, and I could not respond to them all, but I want you all to know that I've certainly read them all. And I'm thinking through this, and I appreciate Councillor Kentner's comments and would very much like us to consider those opportunities as we move forward. But looking at this case, whether or not there's time for that, I don't know. But we do have a budget upcoming before us, an opportunity to discuss any enhancement to that budget, and perhaps we will, around this horseshoe, take the time to talk about investing some money in Leith Beach, as I think there's a definite need for that. But my question is, in relation to your comment, Mr. Armstrong, about the existing building and recognizing that it does infringe on areas that it probably shouldn't, but because it's an existing footprint, could the proponent rebuild a restaurant within those boundaries and make that a viable, project moving forward, and thus maintaining the wishes of the residents who we as councillors are here to represent, and providing him with the opportunity to continue with a business, albeit probably smaller than his intended size of operation?
Your worship, the two parts to the question. One is the ability to rebuild, and he would have an ability to rebuild under legal non-conforming aspects. I don't think I was referring to, I think the building is on the land he owns. If any encroachments, actually, I think part of our entrance encroaches onto his property. With regard to viability, I couldn't comment on that. That's a business decision, viability, and I couldn't provide any comments on if he could do something on that land that would be viable.
Liz?
Just to add to that, so I think with that scenario, you're also into a servicing question, which is what makes this a unique one for us to consider, because I think the septic system on the existing lot servicing the existing building was constructed under old standards, right? And so that's the recommendation that I had made within the report, was that if we are looking at, and I say we collectively, really it would be Mr. Liddell, but if they are looking at a revised request, I think the starting point for that is to look at existing lot size, existing building footprint, and then from a servicing perspective, where is the constraint? How big is that constraint just to service that existing footprint? So starting kind of at the change nothing except the septic, kind of as the starting point, because then we can really kind of learn and understand what is that constraint to viability. I think in moving things over and making the building bigger and adding in additional uses, we've got a big scale proposal, a big scale septic system to support it. But what I'd really like to see is the starting point of any future application is if we are replacing just that existing building, maybe not on that footprint, that there's other issues with that particular footprint, but even if we just scooched it over just a smidgen away from the river, how constrained are they in just replacing that existing building? And that's information we don't have at this point in time, and I think would be very valuable in considering any revised proposal is if he's going to just replace, what is the land need for that?
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I want to say to a comment that Councillor Bartley had about staff going to work. I think, Councillor Bartley, that's one of the more solid comments I've heard from you in a number of years. And I appreciate it. I back that up because that's exactly what you as staff, we count on that happening. Also to the comments from the folks saying about having engagement, I can speak for the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield and myself. We can't have 4 because then you'd be having a secret meeting, but I know that we 3 met with folks down there, so we did engage folks down at the beach. I also want to make sure that the audience knows that I had personal conversations, and I can call him John. We had a good conversation in my shop, and if you folks get an opportunity to talk to John about this, this is something I told John. I said, John, the folks that surround you do not dislike you as a person. They dislike your idea of what you would like to do, and that's a big difference. You don't have a dislike for the man, it's his idea. And so when it comes to looking at his proposal here, I think on page 11 of 16 or page 100 of our report, and Liz, you've talked about this and it's come up every time. It's the septic with the new rules that even inside the current footprint, 3 meters from a lot line, 5 meters from a residence, more than difficult maybe to achieve. So to put my comments square, number 1, it says to go along with staff where it says to refuse the request to transfer anything. I support that. Do not transfer anything. On number 2, to provide support in principle for a lesser exchange, I also will be voting no on that. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm just going to Deputy Mayor Keaveney's comment about money being spent at Leith Beach. Hate to say it, for 2020, I don't believe we have any money for Leith Beach. I would like a little maintenance done, but just to let people know, there is money in the budget for 2021 to do some renovations down at Leith Beach, just so you know it's in the budget for 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vickers?
So maybe I'm, through your worship, maybe I'm concentrating too much on the septic. There's parts of me saying maybe having the present septic system is probably way worse than having a new septic system. Like, have we thought about that, or have we talked about that? Like, no, since it was done such a long time ago, like, is anything an improvement than what there is there right now?
So it is my understanding that when the property was acquired by Mr. Liddell, they had carried out an upgrade or repair to the existing system. So my understanding is that it is functional for the loading it was designed for. What that is and the detail of that design calculation, I don't know. So I really don't know if that existing system has the capacity to deal with additional inputs or even conversion to commercial use. From the current residential use. It's not detail we have at this point. But I think that's the starting point that I would like us to begin at if Mr. Liddell is looking at the do nothing or the replace on existing scenario, because we're going to need to understand what are the constraints of that system. Can it be used to deal with a replaced building, which I understand likely not. And then if they are looking at an extension of that septic, can they shrink the building to accommodate that on the existing lot, or does that really necessitate a minor addition of land to facilitate even just that existing footprint?
Okay, one more. Yep.
Just one?
Nope, go ahead.
So a couple questions. Does anybody know what he paid for the lot? So, you know, we've heard some loose comments about repatriating the lot and the business. Like, I consider that to be loose talk, because until we know a bit of an idea of price, and he owns it, so virtually, or him or his family own it, they could actually ask a price. It doesn't have to be a valued price. It can be any price that they want if they think that they have a willing buyer in the municipality. So that's a question I'd like to ask.
Did you have a comment on that?
I did. I'm just thinking procedurally, I don't have an answer to that question specifically, and I'm not sure that's something that we could sort of reveal in public session anyway. What I would suggest is if council wants to consider other options for this property that would involve some money, that we follow the Deputy Mayor's suggestion and somebody drafts out an enhancement report for council's consideration, because then we can start talking about amounts and things, because we can do some of that research about how that might work. The other bit that I was going to suggest while I've got the mic going is that I suspect I'm hearing that it might be best to take this one in parts.
Yes, I have that marked. We'll do it in 2 parts. So my question then is, if part 2 is refused, is declined, would it be your thought that it might come back again with another plan?
So my thought is, in wording the recommendation this way, my intention was to provide some clarity. So both on the philosophical approach to is 1 square inch available for sale or not,
right.
And also for the applicant in terms of spending additional monies to support renewed plans, and to kind of lock in those elements of a revised proposal for a review of any future proposal. I do think that if council refuses that support in principle at this point in time, my suggestion to Mr. Liddell would be to go back to the drawing board, starting with that replace existing scenario and really delve into that detailed design of, is that viable on that footprint, with any kind of revision coming back to council, specifically looking at an as-needed basis.
Okay, thank you for that. And are we ready now to call the question? And I would agree that we need to divide this into 2 parts. So I will call the question on number 1, which is to refuse the request by the owner, an exchange. And all in favor of that, and that is carried. And number 2 then, provide support in principle for a lesser exchange and transfer of lands. All in favor of this proposal going forward? And those, sorry. All in favor? And those against? And that is lost, 6-1.
Madam Mayor, could we call recorded vote on that, please?
Yes, we can.
Not after the vote, I'm afraid.
We've done that before. We've
No.
done a.
We
no.
certainly shouldn't. You have voted. So if we vote again, you're voting again on something we've already determined. Recorded votes must always be requested before the vote happens.
Okay, that this vote was declined 6-1. Okay. Thank you all. Moving on to updates from members appointed to County Council and local boards. County Council, Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to that?
I would be happy to, Your Worship. Thank you. We'll give the folks a minute to...
I want to be out of here by 6.
No. We can just
Shall
say
we move
Liz is
on?
going to have the best smelling hair of anybody in the municipality. Yes.
County Council.
County Council, okay. So several things were discussed at county at our last meeting. One is that bike lanes in the county will be closed annually from October 15th to April 15th, just because it's simply too difficult to maintain those over the winter. Councillor Paul McQueen did bring forward a motion, and I'd just like to read it because I think it's going to have an impact here on this municipality. Whereas there is currently a shortage of affordable and attainable homes in Grey County, and whereas the development of enabling land use policies to encourage affordable and attainable housing, such as tiny homes and smaller lot sizes, may require changes to official plans and zoning bylaws, now therefore be it resolved that staff of Grey County bring forward a report to Committee of the Whole on options for municipalities to consider when developing planning policies and other initiatives in order to improve affordable and attainable housing options in Grey County. So I know that's something that we're certainly been discussing throughout our strategic priority sessions and our economic development sessions. So I thought that we should be following what's happening at the county on that level. Okay, and I think I'll leave it there, Your Worship, unless there's anything else you wanted to add from county.
I just wanted to add quickly that a 10-year homelessness and housing plan has been proposed to County Council and has been received for an update. So Anne-Marie Shaw, the Director of Housing, was on CBC this morning talking about that very issue, and I think it's something that we'll all be paying attention to as we go forward.
Your Worship, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you at all, and I thought I would also add that Grey County's planning session for their strategic priorities is October the 15th, beginning at 8:30 in the morning, if anybody wanted to sit on that session.
Okay, thank you. Are there any committee reports or from councillors who are chairing committees? Anything that wants to bring forward at this stage? Seeing none, we'll move on to a motion to move out of committee of the whole. Councillor Kentner, Councillor Bell, thank you. All in favor? Okay. Are there any notices of motion coming forward? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I guess this is to Matt. I'd like to bring a notice of motion forward that municipality Meaford jump on board with the other 800 municipalities across Canada to acknowledge a climate emergency. Having said that, Mr. Clerk, would I have to be here when that was brought forward?
No, not necessarily. You would have to hope that some other members of council would like to move it and second it and discuss it, and you wouldn't be able to justify it, but otherwise we could also give notice today and have it on the first meeting in November's agenda if that's what you prefer.
Okay, I'm sure they would. It's a worthy thing, but I'm going to be away. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to the adoption of the minutes for council meeting September 23rd. I have a mover and a second, Councillor Greenfield. Yeah, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any comments on that? Those minutes, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I'm just going through quickly on my computer here, and it's really a small detail, and it might not even be this first one. It was, my note was page 128. It's a real small detail, and it might be the wrong one we're talking about, but it said our meeting adjourned at 0000. And I mean, it's a minor detail, but just to correct the record.
Absolutely, should have said 6:34, the same as the planning meeting. We'll fix it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All in favor of receiving those minutes, and that is carried. And the special meeting of September 30th. Mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Kentner, Councillor Bartley. And anything on that to add? No, all in favor? And that is carried. Anything from the communications list that council would like to bring forward? Councillor Bell.
Item D on the OPP's billing statement. Item D, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, then we'll bring that forward. Councillor Bell, did you wish to speak to it?
One of the interesting comments that's going to be talked about, I know in our upcoming police community group, is going to be the costing for the OPP, and fellow councillors, you had an opportunity to read that. So basically, our OPP contract is just shy of $2 million, and in the report, it was listed that we have 5,756 households, 233 commercial industrial, 5,989 properties, breaking down to about $183 a property, bringing us almost $1.1 million. So the other 800,000 comes from the calls for service. And when you add the calls for service price to the household, we're at $317 per household, less than $1 a day for policing in our municipality. And it will be one of the conversations that we will be having in our police conversations with the inspector. And comment has always been made, should we have an enhancement to that agreement that we have? And that will be discussed. But I just wanted to bring to council's attention, we're just shy of 2 million for the OPP right now, and we're less than $1 a day to 5,989 properties. And that was my only point on that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for that. Okay, that is it then for correspondence. And at this point, we have a closed session. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to go into closed session? Councillor Bartley, Councillor Greenfield. And we will move into the adjoining room here with the CAO and the clerk in attendance. The matters that we went into closed session about the receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, to which the Deputy Mayor Keaveney declared a conflict and left the room. And the second one was personnel matters about an identifiable individual, and Council gave direction to staff regarding the committee and board appointment. And with that, that comes to adjournment, and I declare this meeting adjourned, 6 p.m. Thanks all. Get home in time for the debate tonight.